Hi, this is Rebecca Kelbert, and I wanted to go over the historical daycare cost data that I have. So, over the years, we've been able to accumulate over 100 daycare projects and the cost data associated with them. So, what I'm going to go over with you is what each line item of cost is. But before I go too deep into the details of a project budget, I just want to point out to you that there is a big spread between costs. And later on, when I show you our data, you're going to see that it's averaged data. And so there are some people that have a lower budget. And I want to assure you that every couple of years or so, we're able to get a project done for just over a couple million. There's 3 projects right there. But that for every project that's, just over 2 million, you've got one that's really tall. Like here in 2020, we completed a project that was over 8 million. So there is a big spread between what you can spend on a daycare center. You can go very minimalistic and very inexpensive, or you can pull out all the stops and make it your dream facility. Either way is good by us. There's no difference one way or another, but I just want to point that out before we go into averages, because if you start looking at these averages and you see that they all average, right here in the $4 to $5 million range, well, if you know that you can't afford that, I don't want to kind of steer you away from the idea of developing a daycare center. I want to assure you it can be done for less. It's just a matter of making smart choices and sizing your facility to fit your budget. So this is the project data that we have available to us. This is the over 100 projects that I mentioned before. You can see each one of these lines is a project with a corresponding average of that year, right? So the first 2 projects we did that were daycare centers were in 2014. Then we did a number in 2015, 2016, did even more in 2017. We did about 32 projects in 2018, and I have not accumulated that data. I skipped over it just out of the just out of a way to cope with how much time am I going to put into this information. So I know that I can connect the dots rather easily from 2016 to 2019, and 32 projects is a lot of data to input. So then we skip over to 2019, which I think is another 24 projects. And, the 2020 projects, we're not done tallying everybody up. So right now we have 9 completed that began construction in 2020. So the sheet that I'm going to flip over to next is each year's average is the data that we're going to be looking at. So it is averaged data. So as I go through this, I'm also going to point out what certain things are and what's included in them. So you'll see here, each line is a year, and I did skip over 2018. I just deleted that line completely because it throws everything out of balance. So you can see the number of projects that are being averaged, what year that it's open. So when somebody talks about land costs are this green section. You're talking about the cost of the actual land to purchase the land and closing and realtor fees. We also broke it down into what the property size, the average property size was for each year, which corresponds to the size in acres. And then we give you a cost per acre average for that year. So you can see, and it really does depend on what city, what state you're in. You can see our 2 projects in 2014 actually had a higher cost than any other project. Now, one way that happens, or multiple ways that happens, is some of these projects that we've got averaged, The reason why that cost is bumped up is because one of our clients, or a few of our clients actually, purchased land with a building already on it and intended to remodel that building. So if you see that this cost per acre is really high in comparison to your area, the reason why is because it was not bare, undeveloped land that they were purchasing, but this also includes some purchases of entire buildings and facilities that were remodeled. So then we get into the average cost of land, including all of the realtor fees and closing costs, and that's what we're seeing as an average. The next section is hard costs. Hard costs are what you see. Hard costs are items that you see what you put your money into. So hard costs are the site construction and the building construction. When you're done spending the money on hard costs, you see what you get. Like it's a tangible, hard item that you have paid for. So site costs would be retaining walls, parking lots, sidewalks, drainage, landscaping, clearing or grading of the land. We break it down into construction cost per acre, so you can see roughly what roughly what the average is on how much you're going to spend improving an acre. Now, again, some of those numbers are really sloped sites that have retaining walls and a lot of grading. Some of them were flat, so there's a big variation between all of this. Then building construction cost. Building construction cost really is the four walls that enclose your building and everything inside, from the foundation up to the top of the roof. We break that down into an average building size that we're using. So this will tell you, on average, the sizes that this cost gives you. We also break it down into a cost per square foot. So if you know that you want to have a 6,000 square foot building, you can interpolate that with 2020's cost per square foot data and multiply that out and come up with a preliminary cost amount for your building construction cost. Right? That also tells you on average how many kids are in each facility. Some of this data we don't have, so when you see that hashtag divide by 0, that's an error message by Excel just saying we don't have the data input in there. And then the number of kids per gross square foot. So everybody knows, or most childcare owners are familiar with the 35 square feet per child, but that's on the inside of a classroom. When you think about the entire gross building square footage, you have to include the area for the walls, the area for hallways, receptionist, office, laundry, kitchen, storage, all the restrooms. So when you average in the entire building and not just the classroom area, these are the averages we're seeing in our facilities. So we've seen anywhere from 63 to 70 square feet per child on average for gross square footage, which is different than a net square footage. The 35 per square foot is your net square footage, but 63 to 70 square feet per child for the whole building envelope is what you can expect to get. And then this column here is our average total hard costs. So that is the construction cost and the building cost added up, right? So that's all that is. All the construction costs, all the building costs averaged up per year so that you can see this is your total hard cost. When a lender or a financer is talking to you about what are your hard costs, what they mean is your site construction cost and your building construction cost. And the two of those give you your total building construction, your total hard costs. So then let's get into soft costs. Soft costs are all of that money that you have to spend on services. right? Soft costs will be your government fees and permits. So if you've got a land disturbance permit and a building permit, if you have water a water fee, a utility fee that you have to pay, those are what these fees are all about. So that is a soft cost. You spend the money, but you don't necessarily see what you get for it. It's more of a service that is being provided. So another line item of soft costs are your architects and your engineers. So there's the civil engineer, there's your architect, your structural. MEP is mechanical, electrical, plumbing services. But then this line item also includes things like your surveyor, if you need to get a survey done. It includes somebody going to test the building if it's an existing building for lead. Somebody going to do a soils test if it's a bare piece of land. So there's some other miscellaneous service providers that are lumped into this, but the larger proposal amounts are civil, architectural, and then the engineering services, structural, and MEP. Another soft cost line item is your contractor. So when a contractor gives you a bid, there's a line item on that bid form that asks him what his overhead and fees are that he's counted for. And that's what these amounts are. These are his overhead and fees. So his overhead is some staffing and management overhead, some administrative overhead, and the fees that he's charging for managing the project. So that's a soft cost as well. Once you've paid him that money, he's provided you a service, but you don't have a tangible thing from that service provided. So all of the soft costs added together are in each one of these line items. And you can see that they actually become quite a large percentage of your project. So back in 2014, soft costs ran around 40% of your project cost, whereas now they're up closer to 67% of your project cost. Then you get into your financing costs. That's your bank or your lender. So with that, what we do is we look at their overhead and fees. So what they're doing is they're applying a percentage of overhead and fee and interest to the loan amount that they're providing you. So because they're providing you a loan on both the hard costs and the soft costs, right? Both the building, the site, and everybody you've had to hire to make the project happen, because they're giving you a loan on that, that's where you get this larger number of both the soft costs and the hard costs added together. And then they give you interest rates and fees based on a percentage of that total loan amount that they're giving you. They roll their fees into your loan amount, which grows your loan to this. So this line item here on AH, this is actually the amount that you'll be getting a loan for. This is the loan amount that you would finance on average on a yearly basis. This is what we've seen happen. Whenever you take out a loan, you've got to put money down, right? You've got to put 20% down generally if it's an SBA loan. And then there's some other fees. Generally, I would say early on in the project or at the very end of the project that you'll cover out of your own pocket. So when you go to do a project, you've got to have cash in your pocket in a bank account you and your business partners have put together, available for the down payment on the loan, right? The deposit on the loan, as well as I would say what you can call incidentals, right? So sometimes incidentals would be some early conceptual plans early on in the project. There could also be some small fees that were soft costs that you paid for out of pocket instead of having it rolled into the financing of the project. And then at the end of the project, there would also be maybe something that you wouldn't finance into it would be supplies for your classrooms. Most people do wrap furniture and playground equipment into the financing of their project. So all of these projects include the furniture and the fixtures on the wall. It also includes the playground equipment. But there's still some incidentals. So you'll see with these percentages, if you assume that a 20% deposit on your loan, then you can see another 5, 2, 4, 6% just set aside for incidentals is a good safeguard to have a little extra cash above and beyond your 20% that you needed to put in. Sometimes there's also things that you see during construction that you want to improve, and you pay out of pocket for it at that point. So sometimes toward the end of a project, you might see that you want an upgrade in something at the last minute, and you're willing to pay the contractor more money to upgrade on something. So the total project cost is your loan amount plus your cash injected into the project over the course of the project. So your actual total project cost is higher than your loan amount. So let's look at some of this graphically. Right now, with this graph here on the right, this average total projects, or on the left, I apologize, this average total project cost, you can see the average project cost was a little over $3 million in 2014, and 15 it was right around the same range. 2016 it shot up really high into the 3.8 million, and it's kind of levitated in that cost range through 2020. Another interesting thing with cost breakdown is that in 2014, your land cost and your building and site cost, this yellow and green pie, were actually larger than half of your entire budget. The green is the cost of your land. The yellow are your hard costs, your building and your site construction costs. And then all of the soft costs and owner out of pocket was smaller than 50%. But what we're seeing trending now into 2020 is that your soft costs and your owner out of pocket, these three pies on the left, actually take up slightly over 50% of the entire project. So if you know the land cost and you've budgeted your building and your site improvement cost, if you take those three numbers and double them, that will give you a good general idea of what your full project budget is going to be. Another interesting breakdown is this is your, and then what we have here is a cost breakdown similar to the pie, but done in a bar graph so that you can see what has grown over time and what the general dollar amounts were for each line item on each year. It's really a lot easier to look at this graph than it is to go up to the table above. One final table that I wanted to show you just to graphically break things down is the breakdown of your soft costs. So the blue bars are your government fees, the orange bars are architect engineer fees, and the gray bars are your contractor fees, the contractor overhead. So it's a little shocking when you first hire architects and engineers to see how large of a fee they have. But when you think about the fact that architects and engineers start the project with you when you first are looking at land, and they stay with you the entire course of the project until you move into it after it's been built. And that process can be anywhere from on average 2 years, sometimes even longer. But just for an average daycare, let's just say for 2 years, right? That's 2 years of labor for this amount of percentage. And then your contractor fees actually are much higher for a smaller amount of time. Their style is more, they come in, they work hard for 6 months, and they get out and they get paid for that expediency. The government fees as well, you'll see The permitting and utility hookup fees are pretty high. For utilities and for permitting, review, and inspections, that's a pretty high fee compared to the amount of labor that architectural and engineers put in and contractors put in. Anyway, I hope this clears up how much a childcare project costs. These numbers, you can pause the video anywhere that you want to focus on these numbers and kind of do a breakdown of your own. There's many ways you can go about it. So you can copy over you can copy over some of these line items and then create. There's a few different ways that you can really use this to your advantage. You can just look at it as far as, how much do you plan to spend on land? If it's more or less, then you know that your overall project is going to be more or less. Then as well, you can come over here to your building size. You can work backwards from the number of kids that you want to have in your building, which will tell you how many square feet that you want. So say you want 100 kids instead of 205. So that means times 70, you're going to need about a 7,000 square foot building. So if you come back over here, if this was a 13,000 square foot building, then roughly half that size is going to be roughly half that cost. So there's a lot of interpolating that you can do with this data. As well, another way you can back into things is how much cash do you have? How much cash do you and your business partners have among you to invest in this project? So, if you've got this amount of money, then this is the amount of project that you can afford. And that project on average has how many children in it, right? So you can go from that way. You can look at what your cash available is and back into the size of building that you can afford and the amount of money that you can spend on land. It's just about crunching the numbers. There's no wrong or right answer. This is just historical data to give you a head start on planning the finances of your project. All right, so if you need more help from us, please email me at rebecca@calvertdesign.com. Thanks.